She decided my bike didn't belong. Karen didn't ask me to stop riding my motorbike. She announced it, like she had already won. I remember the exact second it happened, because it was one of those moments where time stretches just enough for your brain to whisper, "This is going to be a problem." The engine was still warm beneath me. The late afternoon sun sat low enough to throw long shadows across the street. Birds chirped. Lawn sprinklers ticked. Somewhere, a dog barked once and went quiet. A normal neighborhood. A peaceful neighborhood. And then there was Karen. She stood at the edge of her driveway like a sentry guarding imaginary borders, arms folded so tightly they looked locked in place. Her lips were pressed into a thin, permanent scowl, the kind that suggested she hadn't enjoyed anything since the invention of joy. I swung my leg off the bike, pulled off my helmet, and that's when she spoke. "You can't keep doing this. Not hello. Not excuse me. Not even we need to talk." Just a sentence delivered with finality, like she'd just outlawed gravity. I blinked. "Doing what?" She pointed. Not vaguely. Not politely. Her finger stabbed the air like my motorbike had personally offended her ancestors. That. Riding that thing through our neighborhood. There it was. Our. Not the city's. Not the public roads. Hers. I glanced down at my bike, a clean, well-kept motorbike that I'd owned for years. No obnoxious mods. No illegal exhaust. No roaring revs. I didn't even start it inside the neighborhood. I coasted downhill before easing on the throttle like a civilized human being. "I live here," I said calmly. "So yeah, I ride home." Her eyes narrowed. "That doesn't mean you're allowed to disturb everyone else." Everyone else. Interesting choice of words, for someone who was currently standing alone. I looked up and down the street. Closed garage doors. Empty sidewalks. Curtains gently fluttering behind windows, though I could already feel eyes peeking through them. Karen had an audience in mind. "I'm not disturbing anyone," I said. "I'm just riding my bike." She said my next favorite sentence in the entire saga. "Well, I don't like it." And suddenly it made sense. This wasn't about noise. It wasn't about safety. It wasn't about rules. It was about preference. Karen stepped closer, invading my space the way people do when they assume intimidation is authority. "This is a quiet neighborhood," she continued. "Families live here. Children. People who work from home." I nodded slowly. "So do I." She waved that away. Motorbikes attract the wrong kind of attention. I almost laughed. "What kind of attention?" I asked. She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, then said, "The kind that lowers property values." Ah, there it was. The unholy trinity of entitlement. Property values. Personal discomfort. Imaginary authority. I could feel the tension settling in, thick and uncomfortable. This wasn't a casual complaint. This was a declaration of war dressed up as neighborhood concern. "I'll be speaking to the HOA," she said. The way she said it, slow, deliberate, told me she believed those 3 letters were a magic spell. "Hoa." I smiled. That annoyed her. "You're welcome to," I replied. "I'm not breaking any rules." Her face tightened, like my calm response physically pained her. "Oh, I already have," she said quickly. "They're very concerned." That was a lie. I knew it was a lie because I knew the HOA president. The HOA barely responded to emails. There was no universe where they'd discuss my bike without notifying me. But Karen didn't care about truth. She cared about control. From behind her, a garage door creaked open somewhere down the street. I felt it, the moment when a private confrontation became a public performance. Karen straightened her shoulders. "You need to stop riding it," she said louder now, "or I'll make sure this escalates." I tilted my head. "Escalates to what?" Her lips curled into something between a smile and a threat. "You'll see." She turned sharply and walked away, heels clicking against the driveway like punctuation marks at the end of a sentence she thought she'd finished writing. But she hadn't finished anything. Because as I stood there, helmet in hand, watching her disappear into her house, one thought burned in my mind. This woman didn't want compromise, she wanted obedience. And people like that, they never stop at one demand. Karen didn't wait for the HOA. That should have been my first clue that she had no intention of following rules, only inventing them. It started quietly, subtly, the way entitlement always does when it's testing how much space it can take before someone pushes back. The next morning, I walked outside and immediately knew something was wrong. There was a piece of paper tucked neatly under my motorbike's handlebar. Not folded. Not crumpled. Placed. Like evidence. I pulled it free and read the words written in aggressive block letters. Please be considerate. This is a quiet neighborhood. No name. No signature. No authority. Just a command pretending to be polite. I exhaled through my nose and shook my head. I wasn't angry yet. Mostly amused. This was classic passive-aggressive territory. The kind of move someone makes when they want control without confrontation. I started the bike. Slowly. Gently. The engine purred, low and controlled, exactly the way it always did. And that's when I saw her. Karen's front door flew open like she'd been waiting behind it with her hand on the knob. She stepped outside holding her phone, already filming. Already recording. Already narrating. Here we go again, she said loudly, making sure the camera picked it up. Another example of the ongoing disruption. I looked at her. Then at the phone. Then back at her. Morning, I said. She ignored me. This is what I deal with every day, she continued, sweeping her phone toward my bike like she was documenting wildlife. Completely unnecessary noise. The bike idled, barely louder than a lawn mower down the street. I killed the engine. Silence fell instantly. What noise? I asked. She froze. For a moment, her brain clearly hadn't prepared for reality contradicting her script. Well, she stammered, then recovered. It's the idea of it. The idea. I stared at her. You're filming me for the idea of noise? She lifted her chin. I'm gathering evidence. Of what? I asked. My thoughts. Her face flushed. Don't get smart with me. I swung my leg off the bike and walked a few steps closer. Not aggressively, just enough to remind her I was a human being, not a prop in her neighborhood drama. You don't get to film me on my property, I said calmly. She scoffed. This is a public street. I'm in my driveway. She didn't stop recording. Instead, she stepped backward, phone still raised, voice climbing an octave. See? Intimidation. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Behind her, a curtain twitched. Then another. Neighbors were watching now. Karen thrived on that. From that day on, the notes multiplied. One on my mailbox. One taped to my trash bin. One slipped under my windshield wiper again, this time laminated. Laminated. No motorbikes before 9 a.m. or after 6 p.m. I laughed when I read it. Actually laughed. Because it was so specific. So confident. So completely made up. She'd even added a little bullet point at the bottom. Repeated violations will be reported. Reported to who? The motorcycle police? I decided to test something. That evening, at exactly 6:01 p.m., I rolled my bike out of the garage. I didn't start it. I didn't ride it. I just stood there adjusting my gloves. Karen's door opened instantly. She stormed across her lawn like she'd been summoned by an alarm only she could hear. I told you, she snapped, waving her phone again. No riding after 6. I'm not riding, I said. She looked down. The bike was off. Dead silent. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then said, don't play games with me. Then don't make rules you can't enforce, I replied. That's when she did something that changed everything. She stepped into the street and stood directly in front of my driveway. Arms spread, blocking me. You are not leaving, she said. Not on that thing. I stared at her, stunned. You cannot physically block my driveway, I said. She smirked. Watch me. That smirk. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about annoyance anymore. This was about power. About winning. About forcing someone else to submit so she could feel important. A car slowed at the end of the street. Someone honked. Karen didn't move. Move, I said firmly. She raised her phone higher. If you try anything, I'll call the police. I took a slow breath. Because when someone threatens police over something this stupid, it's no longer ridiculous. It's dangerous. And that was when I decided I wouldn't just tolerate her anymore. I would let her expose herself. Karen didn't block my driveway again. Not because she'd learned anything, but because she'd decided her next move needed witnesses. The shift was subtle at first, but I felt it immediately. No more handwritten notes. No more ambushes in the driveway. Instead, there was a kind of smug distance, like she was standing on the edge of a chessboard, convinced she'd already forced checkmate. That's when the rumors started. I heard them before I saw them. A neighbor stopped me while I was taking out the trash. Hey, everything okay with that motorcycle situation? He asked carefully. I raised an eyebrow. What situation? He hesitated. Well, Karen's been saying you've been warned. That you're refusing to cooperate. There it was. The story. I thanked him, rolled my bin back, and went inside, but my mind was already racing. Karen hadn't just complained. She'd started rewriting reality. Over the next few days, it spread. That my bike was modified. That I revved it aggressively. That kids were afraid to play outside. One neighbor even asked if I'd lost my temper with her. I hadn't raised my voice once. But Karen didn't need truth. She needed momentum. Then came the email. Subject line: Special HOA meeting, community safety concern. I smiled when I read it, because now it was official. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday evening in the community clubhouse, the same beige room where people usually argued about parking and holiday decorations. But this time, the energy was different. People showed up early. They whispered. They glanced at me. And then Karen arrived. She walked in holding a thick folder, chin lifted, posture rigid, like a prosecutor entering a courtroom. She didn't sit near me. She sat front and center, placing her folder carefully on the table like it contained state secrets. When the HOA president called the meeting to order, Karen didn't wait to be acknowledged. She stood. I believe I should speak first, she said. No one stopped her. That was their mistake. She launched into it immediately. A practice speech. About how she'd tried to be reasonable. About how she'd spoken on behalf of concerned residents. About how my motorbike represented a pattern of disregard for community standards. She held up printed photos. Grainy screenshots from her phone. Me riding down the street. Me parking. Me existing. Gasps rippled through the room. Not because the images were shocking, but because of how normal they were. This, she said dramatically, tapping one photo, is not acceptable. The HOA president cleared his throat. Karen, to be clear, is the vehicle in question legally registered? She waved her hand dismissively. That's not the issue. It actually is, he replied. Her smile tightened. She flipped open her folder and pulled out a typed document titled, Proposed Neighborhood Motorcycle Restriction. I couldn't make this up if I tried. She read aloud. No motorbikes before 9 a.m. or after 6 p.m. No idling within neighborhood limits. No use of motorbikes deemed disruptive by residents. Deemed disruptive. By who? By her. She finished and looked around, clearly expecting applause. Instead, there was silence. Then Mrs. Alvarez raised her hand. I live 2 houses down, she said gently. I've never heard his bike. Karen snapped her head toward her. Well, maybe you're not home enough. Mr. Jenkins leaned forward. I work nights. The bike doesn't bother me. Karen scoffed. You don't speak for everyone. That's when the HOA president spoke again. Karen, he said slowly, we've also received complaints. Her smile returned. Exactly. He continued, about you. The room shifted. We've documented reports of harassment, he said. Filming neighbors. Blocking driveways. Posting unauthorized notices. Karen laughed sharply. That's absurd. The president looked down at his notes. One resident reports you stood in front of their driveway and refused to move. Karen's face went pale. I was preventing a disturbance, she said quickly. You cannot physically restrain someone, he replied. Then something beautiful happened. Another neighbor stood up. Then another. Stories poured out. About Karen yelling at delivery drivers. About measuring street parking with a tape measure. About calling the police over trash bins. Karen tried to interrupt. The president stopped her. Karen, this meeting is not going the way you think it is. Her voice cracked. I'm just trying to protect the neighborhood. No, someone said from the back. You're trying to control it. The word hung in the air. Control. Karen sat down slowly, clutching her folder like it was a life raft. And for the first time since this started, she wasn't in charge anymore. The meeting ended without applause, without shouting, and without Karen getting what she wanted, which somehow felt louder than any argument ever could. People filed out of the clubhouse slowly, voices hushed, eyes darting. Not toward me, but toward Karen. She stayed seated, hands locked around that folder, staring at the table like it had personally betrayed her. I didn't say a word as I walked past. I didn't need to. The HOA president sent the follow-up email the next morning. It was short, clinical, impossible to twist. It clarified that legally registered vehicles were permitted in the neighborhood. No individual resident had authority to restrict lawful transportation. Harassment, filming, or physical obstruction would result in penalties. No names were mentioned. None were needed. The neighborhood changed after that. Not dramatically. Not overnight. But noticeably. The first time I rode my motorbike after the meeting, I did it exactly the way I always had, slow, controlled, respectful. The engine hummed. The street remained peaceful. The sky looked the same. But the energy was different. A neighbor waved. Someone nodded. A kid on a bicycle gave me a thumbs up. Karen's house stayed quiet. Her blinds, once permanently open, were shut tight. Days passed. Then weeks. No more notes. No more filming. No more imaginary rules taped to my property. Once I saw her outside while I was walking. Not riding, just walking. She glanced at me, then quickly looked away. Not angry. Embarrassed. And that's when it hit me. Karen never wanted the bike gone. She wanted the feeling of authority. The ability to point at something and say, I decide. But when the spotlight turned on her, when people asked questions, when facts replaced feelings, her power disappeared. Because entitlement only works in silence. Now, when I ride through the neighborhood, nothing dramatic happens. And that's the point. No confrontations. No threats. No fake rules. Just a road. A bike. And the quiet understanding that some lines can't be crossed, no matter how loudly someone demands they be erased. If you've ever dealt with someone like this, drop a comment below. I want to hear your story like the video. If you enjoy entitlement being exposed, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Because this wasn't the last Karen I'll meet, and it probably wasn't the last one you've met either. Thanks for writing this one with me.